underway. Is this on? Now it is. Yeah.
Hey, Tom.
I have already had one.
We got lights.
Oh, maybe
Or
we
is this
should.
intentional? I mean, do you guys mind sitting in the dark? I'm not asking you. Okay. Somewhere we gotta have a light. I got one.
All right.
It's like the Staples Center.
Okay, well, I thought someone,
There we go.
let there be light. Okay, we'd like to welcome everyone out to our council meeting this evening. This is July 15th, and our start time is 7:01. And what we typically do in getting our meeting started, we have one of our council members lead us out, and this month it will be Council Member Dave Thomas.
Well, we'd like to do the Pledge of Allegiance for everybody to stand. Then afterwards, we'll have an opening prayer by Layton's living legend, Don Wilhelm. Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, as we bow our heads before the beginning of this city council meeting for Layton City, we wish to express our gratitude for the many things that we have available in our city, for the quality of life, our parks, arts, the safety that we enjoy because of our police and fire departments and all those that work to make our community a better place, including all those people that are in our community that continue to volunteer and help make Layton one of the best places to live in the country. We ask thee to bless this city council and mayor and the leaders of our city. Bless them with discernment and empathy and understanding, that they will be able to make the decisions that's best for the whole community. We also ask for a special blessing that thou will bless us with moisture at this time. And these favors and blessings we ask for in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you very much. Okay, council, I'll call this meeting to order, and we do have several sets of minutes to adopt. If anyone would like to take action on that, or if you have any corrections, please let it be known now.
Madam Mayor, I move that we accept the minutes of Layton City Council work meeting March 18th, 2021, minutes of Layton City Council work meeting April 15th, 2021, minutes of Layton City Council meeting June 3rd, 2021, and the minutes of Layton City Council strategic planning work meeting June 29th, 2021 as written.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and second that we adopt the minutes of the meetings. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Okay, we'll move on now to our municipal announcements. So any members of the council, should you have any municipal announcements, please do so.
You bet. The 4th of July is over, in case you guys didn't know that. But now we got to look forward to the 24th. Now, the 24th is a special day. It's not just Pioneer Day, but it's also when the Riders in the Sky come. And if you haven't heard Riders in the Sky, you're missing out. They come on the 24th. They're a great bunch of guys. It's probably one of the concerts I can say the whole family will enjoy, whether you're 5 years old or if you're like Don, 85, you'll be fine. So anyway, that's going to happen. And then right after that, we have our light parade. And if you haven't been to the light parade, that's a hoot. See everybody running around all dressed up in lights, and it's a lot of fun. And before that, we're having we used to have Taste of the Town, but because they can't get enough people to work, all the restaurants, we're having the food trucks. Is that right?
Yes.
Food trucks come. So all I care about is the corn dog truck. If he comes, I'm fine. If not, I'll have to go somewhere else. But anyway, it'll be fun. And that's on the 24th. So come over in the afternoon, stay all night.
So the trucks will start lining up at 5:30, and from what I'm being told, they'll stay until 11:45. So they will continue through our party zone of the electric light parade.
It's not a new municipal event, but I want to take the opportunity to thank the Parks Department for all they did for the 4th of July. I am somewhat kind of glad I won't be here next year when the 4th of July happens, because I hope you guys that stay. The fireworks is, you've got something to live up to. I heard so many positive comments about, wow, that was just absolutely incredible. So we did make an impact from last year and this year. But no, the Parks Department, all of their staff, it was just amazing what all that they did for those couple of days actually beforehand. And also to thank our fire department for going with us on the Hometown Heroes. That was really nice of them to participate as well.
And like Mr. Wilhelm said, it takes a lot of volunteers to pull this off. So we want to thank all the volunteers as well. Okay, anyone else have any announcements? Okay, we'll continue on. We do not have any verbal petitions or presentations, so I'll move down to our citizens' comment portion of our meeting. So this is a portion where you're welcome to get up and bring to our attention any information or concerns you may have. If there is an item on the agenda, in particular, under the public hearing portion of our meeting, if you wish to speak on that, we'll allow you to at that time. But for now, if there's anything else that you wish to express your views about, you're welcome to stand up to either side of the podium here. Very good. Seeing that there's none, I'll go ahead and move on to item number 5, which is our consent items. And these items are considered routine in nature. They can be enacted on one single motion. So we have several items on the consent items that we'll be talking about. So at this time, I'll go ahead and proceed unless anyone wants to make a change.
Madam Mayor, I just request that we discuss and vote on E separate.
Okay, we can do that. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and proceed with items A through D. And I'll call for a single action at that time, and then we'll also then proceed with item E separately. So let's go ahead and start out with item number A, which is a development guidelines and design standards. And that item will be presented by Mr. Steve Jackson.
Mayor, Council, it's good to be with you tonight. Before you, for your consideration, is the adoption of Ordinance 21-20, which is the adoption of the development guidelines and design standards for the City Engineering Division. Every year, the City Engineering Division makes minor changes to our engineering standards, and by state law, we bring those to you for adoption as an ordinance. This year's particular list is cleaning up a lot of items that we found were needing to just be adjusted to be more consistent in our practices, but also to meet some of the state codes and state laws as well as ordinance changes that we have. So with that, the staff recommends that council adopt Ordinance 21-20, amending the development guidelines and design standards.
Okay.
Is there any questions I can answer?
Council, any questions?
All right.
Go ahead. I know, Mr. Jackson, you also have item number B, which is the Interlocal Cooperation Agreement.
All right, thank you. And also for your consideration tonight is Resolution 21-23, which will approve the adoption or approve the interlocal cooperation agreement between Layton City and Davis County for transportation project reimbursement for the 2700 West project that is occurring currently out in the west side of our city. Davis County has transportation funding that they requested grant proposals on. Layton City submitted a grant proposal for that funding and was awarded $3 million to help construct 2700 West. The conditions of that grant is that we match that $3 million with an equal 20%. The contract that we have currently out on that project more than meets and exceeds that number. It also gives us a 2-year time frame to spend this money and have this project completed. We anticipate that the project will be done, this portion of the project will be done before the end of this construction season this October. So with that, the staff recommends that council adopt Resolution 21-32, authorizing the city manager to execute the interlocal cooperation agreement between Layton City and Davis County for transportation project reimbursement. Are there any questions I can answer on that one?
I just have one. So
Yep.
I knew we were going to go 27 from Gentile.
Yes.
So will this whole thing from Hillfield out to the highway be done, or will just the Gentile first and then?
The current phase is from the West Davis corridor to Gentile, and then the county has indicated that they anticipate awarding another $3 million to continue from Gentile to Hillfield Road. So that will be in the next funding cycle, if it's awarded through the COG this year.
Any other additional questions, council? Very good.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jackson. Let's go ahead and move on to item number C, which Mr. Gary Crane will present that information to us. It's regarding amending the Layton City Municipal Code for public notice requirements.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. As you may be aware, this last legislative session, a number of the notice provisions were changed. In fact, there were a bunch of them that changed because they took out newspapers as a necessary step in any notification, mainly because the newspaper industry has changed considerably, and most of the big newspapers in Salt Lake and that type of thing do not no longer delivered to the homes and on a regular basis. And so for all of those reasons, it changed. A short time ago, community development brought to you a number of ordinance provisions that actually took out the newspaper out of those sections of the code. And what I did was I had Katie from our office go through the rest of our ordinance and make sure that we got the rest of them. And so these are the rest of them. The rest of the items that are identified in state code is not requiring newspaper notification. And so with that, I'd recommend that you approve. Let's see if I can find the number on it. Ordinance 21-19, which would bring us into compliance with state law.
Any questions, council? Well, we're zipping right along. Thank you. We'll then move down to item number D, which is an amend a settlement agreement between Layton City and Saratoga, and Mr. Chad Wilkinson will present that to us.
Thank you. Mayor, council, as was stated, this is an amendment to the Saratoga settlement agreement. This is a copy of the site plan that was approved as part of that settlement agreement. The property is located at the corner of Antelope and Main Street, SR 126 there, State Route 126. The settlement agreement was entered into as a way to resolve some disputes over some vesting rights for the property. I want to just distinguish this from a development agreement amendment that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. This is not a legislative item in that there's no change to the underlying land use. This was just an agreement for the type of, or the location of certain buildings and architectural features and things that would be associated with this particular property. This is, again, just for context, this is the old Kmart site. The original the original settlement agreement anticipated that there would be buildings that would be close to Main Street and Antelope as a way to frame that property and to bring that development out to the street. The proposed change, the amendment, would continue to have buildings located close to the street. This would be one of the changes, which would be to add or replace the existing site plan with this Exhibit D site plan that shows some revised building locations, but still maintains that framing of the property with those buildings close to the street. It has some drive-through components that weren't shown in the original site plan, but are not. They're not inconsistent with that original settlement agreement. There was nothing in there that prohibited or that was concerned about having drive-throughs. This just gives greater clarity on where those would go. There's also another component, which would be some elevations that would be added as Exhibit B. A current Exhibit B shows elevations for the typical types of buildings that would be constructed. You can see those elevations before you. The elevations that have been proposed provide that four-sided architecture that was requested in the original settlement agreement. So staff has reviewed this request for a settlement agreement amendment. We are recommending that the council approve Resolution 21-33, which will amend that settlement agreement between Layton City and Seritage. Be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions?
Okay.
Must have done a great job in our work meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, council, that concludes the first 4 items that are on our consent items. So I'll go ahead and look for a motion to take action on those items.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion on the consent items that we adopt and approve item A, the amendment, the development guidelines and design standards ordinance 21-20, the interlocal cooperation agreement between Layton City and Davis County for the transportation resolution 2132, to amend the Layton City Municipal Code requirements for public notices. Let's see, that is ordinance 21-19, and to amend the settlement agreement between Layton City and Seritage KMT Finance 2133, resolution 2133, as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second that we adopt the items A through D as presented. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move on to item number E, which is an adoption and approval agreement between Layton City and Case Creek. And this item will be presented by Mr. Gary Crane.
I think I'll take the podium rather than sitting in the chair.
Let's stand while you can.
Hey, thank you for the opportunity of presenting this to you. As I indicated in the work meeting, this is probably one of the most important, if not the most important agreements that this council will approve. And actually, in relationship to my 30 years here almost with the city, it's probably the most important document that any council has approved. What it's doing is providing for, into the future, a water source that, first of all, is historical in Layton City, has been here forever. There's some of the oldest water rights that actually exist. And to the credit of the company, they want to make sure that they continue to exist in the place that they're at, which is Layton City. The company also provides 3 dams, a resource that probably is unprecedented in any jurisdiction that I know of. I don't think there's anywhere that has 3 dams that of this nature in their boundaries. And so there's a lot of incredible aspects to this agreement. But the agreement that we're bringing to you tonight, probably the most important part of that is the part that it plays in our master plan, in our water master plan. And you know what? I've tried to play city engineer in the previous meeting, and I didn't do a really good job of it. And so I'm going to have Steve just come up to the podium for a sec. I'm going to have him explain the total amount of water we need in relationship, because lawyers are good at numbers, but only when it comes to
Dollars.
when we're going to be paid and how we're going to be paid, right? And so I'm going to have Steve just explain to you exactly the significance of this aspect of the master plan, water master plan.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. So just to remind you and maybe some of the people who haven't heard this before, the city's master plan calls for about 23,000 acre feet of water to be needed at our build out with the city. We had several options as to how to get there, but the master plan calls for us to utilize secondary water and culinary water to optimize our resources. That 23,000 acre feet requirement is that 15,000 acre feet of that would be culinary water and 8,000 would be for secondary water. Of that 8,000, this is a big part of that component, 3,000 acre feet of water that comes through the reservoirs, through the streams, and then a 2,000 acre foot contract that is held by Case Creek Irrigation with Weber Basin to deliver that water every year. So we do have plans to acquire additional water with our partners in Davis, Weber Canal, Holmes Creek Irrigation, and then we already have Weber Basin as a partner as we operate their system through the city. So a critical component to meeting our goal or our need of 23,000 acre feet is this part of the 8,000 secondary water acre footage. So is there other questions I can answer on that?
Did you have anything more to say?
No, see how easy that was? When he does it, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Just a suggestion again for the good citizens who are here. We talk often in acre feet. That doesn't mean anything to anybody. Oftentimes it's not involved in water. But Steve, give an idea. We're talking about 5,000 acre feet of water. How many gallons of water is it? This is a staggering number. This is why it's so important.
So every acre foot of water is 328,581 gallons. So multiply that by 5. I'm not
5,000.
5,000.
5,000 times 320.
8,000.
8,000.
1.6 billion.
1.6 billion gallons of water.
Thank you. I'm
talking
not
about.
good at mental math with that kind of stuff, but it's a lot of water. So.
The idea is to make sure it stays in this city, in this valley, to be used by current and future residents. That's why it's so significant, just to add to that.
Well, that's perfect. And the ability of the city to be able to kind of balance out the needs of the entire city by using these different resources and not having one resource used in one part of the city, that part of the city being rich in that resource, and another part of the city not. It's enabling the city with the acquisition, not the acquisition, but the taking over the maintenance and of the Weber Basin system has really helped us in doing some of that balancing. And then we'll further do that through our culinary means, through the wells that we have, and then also through the secondary sources that we'll be able to work with in the future to be able to obtain that additional acre footage of water. Yeah, an acre foot of water, I didn't realize it was as much as it is, but it's a very valuable thing. So the unification of all these systems, I think, is a big part of why you're doing this tonight. The other thing is you got 3 dams, and like I say, those dams are incredible resources for the city. Andy Adams is a fishery, and I think Hobbs Pond, Scott can tell me, but they've got big fish in Hobbs Pond, and they allow fly fishing in Hobbs Pond, and so a special type of fishing, which I don't know a whole lot about, but someday when I retire, I'm going to find out a lot about fly fishing up at Hobbs Pond. Anyway, so we've got a mutual interest. Case Creek and Layton City have a mutual interest in seeing that these resources stay here and that they're properly used. Right now, currently, Case Creek Irrigation Company is about 95% pressurized, and that's thanks to the management of Case Creek and the board of Case Creek and the Case Creek shareholders, which have actually put together a pressurized system that is pretty darn effective in delivering water both on the east side of Layton and on the west side of Layton. And there's additional water that can be provided through that pressurized system and that will be provided in the future. Through this agreement, we hope to have enhanced maintenance. The infrastructure is probably the most expensive part of a pressurized system. It's a little more expensive to build this pressurized system and to maintain it than it is to just simply clean out a ditch. And so we'll be better able to do that. State mandates are coming down the line. Scott can tell you that one of the scariest mandates that came this last, I guess it was 2 years ago, was just that everybody needed to be metered overnight, which would have been almost a $3 million cost to Case Creek in order to put that into play. It does need to happen. There's no question it does. But state mandates need to also come with a provision of money to be able to do that. The city would be able to help in lobbying for those efforts and in being able to contain a lot of those things and be able to work with a lot of those things. Management of the system in the future has always been a concern. The average age of a board in the state of Utah, water board in the state of Utah, and I'm not talking about this one, but is about 82 years old. That's from the state engineer. And so a lot of these systems, management into the future is a tough thing to get people to sit on these boards, especially with experience in the area of water. and maintaining a water system. Forfeiture is another issue which has not been an issue in this state, not much of an issue in this state, but will be in the future as these water resources become rarer and rarer. As pressurized systems come into play, the amount of water that is needed to be able to water property or perform the duty on the property is about 40 to 50% of what it would be under just a normal circumstance where you're ditch watering or you're flood irrigating. And so you can see that there's going to be a number of acre feet that will not be used as the system becomes pressurized. And so they need to be put into use in other areas. But the city is able to move that around, and to be able to do that, the city also has an advantage in that it can actually, whereas forfeiture takes place in 7 years, within 7 years for private water owners, the city has a 40-year window to be able to provide for water into the future. So that's an important piece of it as well. Personnel, the company right now employs several individuals. It's a very simple thing because these individuals are key individuals to incorporate those individuals into the city system when it begins to maintain Case Creek system. It is a lot harder for Case Creek on the other side, if it had to operate on its own, to expand exponentially the number of individuals that they would have to have in order to run an effective irrigation system. It's already straining Case Creek the way that it is currently. Billing is another big issue that is addressed by the agreement, and the city will do the billing for the pressurized system, and Case Creek will do the billing for the ditch system. Let me just look here. Currently, in order to build the line to the west, Case Creek entered into an agreement with the Division of Water Resources and actually made a rather large loan for the provision of water out west, which has been a great resource and a great blessing to those folks out west who are using secondary water right now. And so this agreement provides that the city would take over those payments on that loan. The dams, of course, need to be maintained into the future, and where the city is essentially using 95% of the capacity in those dams, the city will assist because we now will be running the pressurized system in doing probably the majority of maintenance on those dams. However, it will be done through Case Creek until such time as all of the agricultural users, or ditch users is what we call them, their properties are developed. Another couple of items that are terms of the agreement. There you go. Thanks. So essentially, the end result of your approval tonight will be that Layton City will essentially take over the pressurized portion of Case Creek Irrigation Company, and Case Creek Irrigation Company will continue to provide service to ditch owners into the future until such time as those ditches disappear. This agreement also provides the shareholders of Case Creek Irrigation Company. There are many who own shares that are more than what they need in order to provide the duty on their properties. In other words, to provide what their properties need. This agreement will provide for those additional shares to retain their value, and also to be able to, there's an investment that these folks have in that. And so we've outlined about 3 different methods that a person can actually use those additional shares in order to provide for and realize the investment that they've made in owning those shares. The system currently provides for about 2,500 customers. In the end, it'll provide, 2,500 customers. In the end, it'll provide for 2,100 more additional customers. So that's a great benefit to the city as well. Just looking and see if you need any further information on this. So Case Creek membership, go ahead and skip to the next slide if you would, Mason. Okay, Case Creek will retain ownership and responsibility for maintaining the reservoirs, but as was indicated, the assistance will come from the city because we are using 95% of the capacity to be able to pay for that maintenance and to be able to provide for that service. And in the future, those reservoirs will need constant maintenance through the future. And so the city will be an important part of that. The city is well qualified to be able to take care of the system, probably better qualified to take care of the system, because the thing we do best is provide utilities and repair utilities and install utilities and engineer utilities. And so those are important points. Next slide, Mason. The board of directors will be constructed so that it'll be adjusted so that both the ditch owners and the pressurized system are represented fairly on the board. Those items that belong to the ditch companies and relate directly to the ditch companies will be weighted. The vote will be weighted towards the ditch companies. Those items that are essentially pressurized oriented will be weighted. Those board members that are appointed under the pressurized system will essentially take responsibility for those decisions, and their decisions will be weighted heavier on the pressurized decisions that are made. Case Creek Irrigation. Let's see. Let's skip to the next slide. Okay. Water emergencies will be covered by the city, and Weber Basin will actually provide their rules for what happens during a drought. Will actually continue to provide for both Case Creek Irrigation Company and also the city. We use those rules right now when it comes to drought, and we'll continue to use those rules into the future. Next slide. So Case Creek Irrigation will continue to build the ditch users, and the city and Case Creek will agree in advance on a fee that the city should pay for the maintenance of the dams and also for continuing to supply water to our pressurized system. Next one. So what needs to be done? Case Creek Irrigation has already approved, their board has already approved this agreement. They approved it a week ago Friday. The next step in the process would be for Layton City to show their approval and support of the agreement. Then the next step would be for the Case Creek Irrigation shareholders to amend their bylaws to provide for what we're doing. And then the last step in the process would be for Case Creek Irrigation pressurized users and shareholders to convey their shares to the city, and they would become secondary customers, secondary water customers essentially of the city at that time. Those additional shares that are owned by folks would be separately dealt with, and there's 3 ways of preserving those, as I've indicated, so that they don't lose a penny on their investment in those additional shares into the future. Are there any questions that you might have right now on the agreement? I know you've seen it. We've had the chance of reviewing it with you. We've also reviewed it with the Case Creek Board. We've reviewed it with you and the Case Creek Board together. Are there any questions that you have regarding the agreement?
I just want to make a statement here myself, because I know how critical this is. And as you've outlined, that the Case Creek Irrigation Company has been a provider of secondary water, which is untreated water for approximately 2,400 residents. And this opportunity has arisen right now for us to be able to take on a pressurized irrigation system that would eliminate the duplication of resources. And I'm talking about customer calls, repairing the system, and of course, other related concerns regarding water. The agreement, I believe, is sustaining proper usage and maintenance of a system that would be beneficial to, I'm going to say all of our residents, even though I know there may be a few that won't be able to have secondary, but this is part of our large plan, and we want to make it happen. It will also benefit the agricultural users as well as a lot of the commercial and secondary users. I do know that there's over 30 miles currently of pipe in the ground that is currently that the city will be able to take over and help maintain. And as you've heard, I mean, it's important that we look at the future use of secondary water and knowing that we need to expand it, which it obviously will help with the western quadrant of our city. And it's part of our overall master water plan that we've already adopted. I know Councilman Day and I have spent many years on this topic. We have vetted it out. We've tried different options, and I think what's presented for us here tonight is a very good and viable step that we need to take. And it's important. It's very important for the development that will greatly benefit all. I have to say, I appreciate our current council members, those that have joined us, that didn't have as many years behind them as Councilman Day and I have had. These guys have dug into this. They've done their homework. They understand it. And I appreciate that, because that's what it takes to really make sure we're making the proper decision on behalf of the residents of this city. But most importantly, as stated earlier, we're looking at taking care of future generations here. Even though we have a need for water and to be able to provide water to our citizens, we're actually looking down the road. And this is definitely a critical step. The action that we're taking tonight is providing transparency to the shareholders of Case Creek Irrigation. We're providing options for those individuals that have additional shares. So I can't state it more strongly than that I would strongly encourage this council to take a positive action on this resolution 2135. At this time, allow discussion to take place. If you guys have any additional questions.
I don't have any additional questions, but I actually do have a question. We don't currently have a dam that we do.
No.
So the dams will be new. We just have our wells. Okay. One of the things that I think will be real positive out of this is with the water conservation issue, is I think the city has probably more capacity of getting these meters in. I currently don't have a meter. We run off a valve, and I wished we had a meter because I think that's important as we move forward with water conservation, that we get these metered soon. And I think the city has the capability to do that. So I think that's a very positive part of this whole thing.
I think it's like you said, Gary, it's an important thing. It's one of the most important votes that we're going to make. And I just wanted to say thanks to Scott and his team at Case Creek. I was reading the minutes. You're passed this resolution unanimously, and we appreciate that, because that shows that you trust Layton City, that we're going to follow through with what we've told you. And I hope today that we can give you that same kind of courtesy, that that we're with you, because this is an important thing. We've all seen what water is so important this summer, even if we haven't been able to water our lawns. And if we can find a way to make better use of that water, I think it's great. So thanks to all the staff and who've done so much work on this, Gary and Steve and all the people in engineering, for getting us to this point where we can have this vote, because I think it's a really, really important step for the future. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Anyone else?
Yeah. Just want to also thank Scott and the Case Creek Irrigation Board for standing up a system that can be transferred for taking care of the precious resources that we have of those dams, those reservoirs, and their jewels in the community, as Gary mentioned. And so happy that we can have this opportunity as a city to keep this water and those water rights in the city where they belong. So I thank you, and please pass on our thanks and our gratitude to the shareholders when you have that meeting.
Sure.
A lot of you have done a lot of things in life, and you've done them for a long time, and they become your baby. Scott has done these forever. Ever since I've known him, he's been involved in it. And to let it go isn't the easiest thing in the world. But he understands that by letting it go, it can grow, it can exist, and it'll move forward. And I know Scott, and he don't let go of a whole lot of things. He's a hard worker. He's beyond a hard worker. And he's done a lot to make this come to fruition, along with a ton of other people in the city. But he's done it knowingly that he can leave it in good hands. And I appreciate Scott in public, which, you know, I don't say things like this too often, of what you've done and what you are going to allow. You know, the Green family can be proud in 30 years when our kids and grandkids are watering their lawn because of what you've done tonight. So thanks.
Go ahead, Councilman.
I appreciate also the work that's gone into this, but as been discussed in many of the meetings, I do have some rather serious concerns still that I will express now, and I would request, Kim, that they are noted in the minutes as well. One of my concerns about the contract is the term of taking over. I think it would be much better off for the city if the city took the whole system at once and the dams do not reside with Case Creek. I think the city could do a much more efficient job of maintaining all of the reservoirs and the whole system. I think, as we've discussed in other meetings, the necessity of having two boards and all of those different things, I don't agree with. I would be much more happy if the city could just take the whole thing at the beginning and avoid all the other complications. It's outlined in there that it'll be a 9-year term anyway. So it's just my opinion, as I've expressed in other meetings, that it would be better for the city to just have the ability to maintain and take care of it all at once. I think that would be better for the city and the shareholders as well, the water holders. Another issue that I have with the contract is it doesn't address, to my satisfaction, the additional shares, how they're going to be taken care of. It does in the short term, but not in the long term. And I realize some of these things that I'm bringing up can be ironed out in the future through negotiations and so forth, but I just want them on the record now, some of my objections to the contract the way that it is now. It also doesn't address exactly the ag users, the additional shares that they have, and how they may want to apply additional water besides what the city would request on the pressure system. We do have on the system now multiple ag users on the pressure system that will be affected by this. Here again, I think it can be worked out. A lot of the financial stuff has never been really detailed, discussed, and I have some concerns on the funding of the Case Creeks, maintaining the reservoirs and so forth if it goes forward. However, I do have other concerns as well. However, I know the master plan, the importance of the master plan. And Madam Mayor, if you're open for the motion, I'm ready to avoid any further delays in implementing the master plan and make the motion that the council approve resolution 2135 and support the future negotiations in the contract tonight.
And I'll second that.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, all those in favor of this, adopting this motion tonight, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. That's a unanimous decision there, which should send a strong message to the shareholders of Case Creek or the Case Creek Irrigation Company, that we are on board and we fully support this idea. So thank you. Okay, I'd like to move on now to the public portion of our meeting. We do have 2 items on the agenda. Item A is a development agreement with the Heartland Corporation, and we're going to have Mr. Chad Wilkinson present that item. So we'll give him a minute to tee that up. Just for the record, as I stated earlier, this will be a public portion of our meeting. However, we're going to have Mr. Wilkinson present the information first, and then at that time, we'll open up the meeting for public comments. So, Chad?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This first item is a consideration of a development agreement amendment. This is with a development agreement amendment for a development agreement with Heartland LLC. This was part of a zone change request back in 2017, the property was rezoned to M1, which is an industrial type zoning. The property has some unique characteristics. One is that it's within the accident potential zone. That's crosshatched there on the map, shows kind of the entire properties within that zone. Property is also immediately adjacent to some existing residential to the south, across 800 North. Because of those characteristics, the development agreement limited the land uses that were allowed to be established on that parcel. These are the land uses that are spelled out in the development agreement currently. The applicant has requested that the land uses be expanded to include a contractor storage yard. That's not included in the existing development agreement, and that would be something that would be requested tonight as part of this development agreement. As staff has reviewed that request, we have concerns. The original development agreement was again concerned about the impacts to any of these uses that would be allowed in the M1 zone, the impacts to the residential neighborhood across the street to the south on 1800 North. Also concerned about the types of uses that could be allowed in that APZ. That's the accident potential zone for the Hill Air Force Base. Because of that, again, those restrictions were placed. The current proposal for a contractor storage yard, we would anticipate would have impacts that were not anticipated originally in the development agreement. Impacts such as, noise, traffic, particularly concerns about traffic on 1800 North. Also, the types of uses that would be allowed through a contractor storage yard. Again, storage of vehicles, storage of equipment, materials that were not originally anticipated in that development agreement. So this was reviewed by the Planning Commission at their meeting on June 22nd. We had some public input as well. The Planning Commission did recommend that the City Council deny this request for a development agreement amendment, and staff would also recommend that the council deny that. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Council, do you have any questions? Okay, seeing that there's none, I'll look for a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second that we open our public hearing regarding item number A. This is the time when we'll invite the audience to come up and state their position on this. We do ask that if there's a group of you and you do have a spokesperson, that's great. We'll allow more time. If not, if it's individually, then, just please kind of keep your comments somewhat brief, but go ahead. Also, make sure you state your name and address for the record. Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Carter. I live at 1768 North, 225 East. So I live off of right off of this 1800 North. First of all, I want to thank the Planning Commission. Just thank you. We appreciate so much what you guys did the last meeting. I know that the city has gotten so many calls from our street and the street adjacent on this property and with its concerns. So we appreciate everyone for hearing and listening to us. First of all, this property. So just let me tell you a little bit too. So you see the storage units right there. And when the storage units went in, it originally said that there was supposed to be a marina, like storing of boats and RVs kind of thing, and that got approved. And so for the past 2 years, we keep seeing these semis, and they bring topsoil and different types of things, and then they just disappear. And so we were expecting that for the last couple of years, but it never happened. We didn't realize that they were using it as a construction yard. We didn't understand, we didn't realize until finally they started bringing trailers on there, and people were actually living on this property. And I know a few of my neighbors got security systems. I got a security system. We spent $700 putting it in because it took away this community safety. Now, this original agreement, there's about 4 or 5 families that was here during that original meeting. Now, the person who presented this said that it was very speedy and they just forgot to add in this. But I can assure you that the city and this community and Hill all work together to make this agreement. And it's not everyone won. And, but it works for our community. Now, right, so they were supposed to do the marina, and I don't know if that's going to go in and if they're just waiting for more money, because the storage units still have a temporary fence up. It's been 2 years since they've been in, and they still have a construction fence up. So that's why we assumed. Now, the first cul-de-sac there, they're actually doing beekeeping. And so it's not like they're not able to utilize any of this property. They are trying to utilize it. They've also been storing just empty beds on 1800 North as well. Now, when they did come in this spring, it was very wet, it was very muddy, and they tracked so much dirt and mud through 1800 North. And in order to clean it up, my dad owned an excavating company, so I'm gonna, they used a grader and they scraped the chip and sill, a lot of the chip and sill, and they did deep gouges on our road. I don't think you guys want that to happen on Antelope. It's also a very tight entrance, and so for them to be able to turn in, they're going to have to be not in the turning lane, but in the fast lane on Antelope. And that just opens up a lot of problems. There's also overhead power lines. And with power lines, when it gets hot, they'll start to droop. And so you may be able to go through that 100 times and it gets hot and you're going to pull them. And so there's a lot of problems, I think, with coming in, as well as problems with on our street. And then that's a public works building right there. When you have a construction yard, they're gonna have diesel, they're gonna have, propane and different things. And that's not probably something you want next to your public works building. Also, there's a lot of safety concerns. This is a legacy school that we're all slated for, and so that means that kids could be walking on that street, and so there is definite safety concerns. The person who brought this up, they haven't been very transparent of who's going to be putting in the fences, who's going to be putting in the trees. What is this going to look like? I haven't seen anything. They didn't show anything. What I understood was this temporary construction company was going to come in and make it look nice. But they didn't say what they were doing or anything. It was pretty much what it sounded like was they were just going to level out the property. I didn't hear if they were going to put asphalt, cement, or anything on there. And so, and even with the staging, they're still going to be bringing topsoil and all sorts of things and dragging it through Antelope. But we've had concerns about this. We've also seen a lot of out-of-state plates coming in. So is this going to be a construction yard for out-of-states, taking jobs from, local construction companies? Is this what this is meant for? There's just a lot of questions, and there is a great concern for our community that, that this is not right. That, the original agreement, it took in consideration our safety and the noise level. We have a couple here that talked about when these semis were coming through, they could hear their house shake. And so, this is just not an appropriate place to be putting a construction yard. And so we hope that you guys vote unanimous, just like the Planning Commission, because this is not something that we appreciate. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
17, 16.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak?
I'm Naomi Christiansen. I live at 675 Adams Street here, Layton. And I wondered if I might ask a question regarding the former things about which you voted, one of those, as well as commenting on the current thing. Is that allowed during this time or not? The irrigation. When we moved here 7 years ago, we were not allowed to get secondary education, irrigation, because we bought an existing home. And we were told that only the new developments can do that. Now, I'm wondering if your plan for the future for these other 2,100 people that are going to be serviced is going to include only new developments. And I know a little bit about pressurized irrigation because they're pushing that in the north on our farms too. It's costly so far as the additional shares. That needs to be better dealt with, as this gentleman indicated. So far as the government, I should say the city taking over the whole matter, probably more easily managed, that's true. But the shareholders need to definitely be a part of that. So what is the plan for other people in the future, the 2,100? Is that just new development? I see people rubbing their head and they're bothered by my question.
Well, the only reason why I'm rubbing my head is because...
Not you.
Oh, well, okay. Well, the point is, though, we're actually in deliberation on a public hearing for a particular item. So technically you're out of order, but I was interested in hearing what you had to say. So I definitely want to hear it. As long as we have your name and number, we'll definitely sit down with you and kind of explain it all.
Okay. Well, so there's no answer about who's going to be served by the additional 2,100 people.
It's
Is
part
that
of the
all new
overall plan.
developments?
We have an overall plan that will accommodate, and hopefully we'll eventually be able to do that. But there are going to be a small pocket within our city that, with the addition of this
Mhm.
agreement, we still won't have it. I, for myself, might be one of those.
Yeah.
But the
pressurized
point is
irrigation
we're taking
costly and it
action.
can't
We're
go
taking
everywhere.
actions that's going to benefit the majority of the residents at this time. So at this
Yes.
point, I'd like to go back to our regular
Yes.
topic.
Thank you. I just
Thank you.
asked and you didn't say no about that. Okay, regarding this on 1800 North, we know quite a few people along there, even though we don't live there. And we've all noticed the dust level this summer. And there's no promise that we're not going to have more drought in the future. And of course, that's one of the reasons you're planning for this. But it is also the case that the heavy equipment that moves through residential or near residential areas can be dangerous in a lot of different ways. And so we hope that the aforementioned notes that were given would be seriously considered in this decision, because I can't see why they couldn't do a housing development there. You know, once you have something temporary, it's real easy for it to remain there forever. And that could cause current and future problems. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, is there anyone else that wish to speak on behalf of item number A, which is the development agreement with the Heartland LLC? I shouldn't say in favor, I'd say just speak on the topic.
Hi, it's been a lot of years since I've been on a microphone. Jessica Lucker is my name, and I live on 1775 North, 225 East. One of the cul-de-sacs across from 1800. I just want to say we live in a beautiful newer area of homes. When we moved into our home was actually in the Utah Parade of Homes. It's a beautiful little area. And when we moved in, across the street on 1800 was just the kind of farmland, and they did some ag right there. And then, you know, this got approved, and we had the warehouse go in. And I'll tell you what, they said they were going to have all that parking there. And there's 10 cars that park on that street right in front of those homes every single day. They supposedly have parking, and they just do it anyway. And it's kind of an eyesore. And then, like Vanessa mentioned, with the temporary construction fence that's held up by sandbags, it's not pretty. They said they were going to put a fence in and do landscaping, and they never did. So I guess our concern is that they're saying one thing, and that's not really going to happen. And even if they're saying they're going to prettify it and make a fence and stuff, when is that going to happen? Sorry, I feel kind of nervous because you can tell, but anyway, the other thing is during both of those construction projects, the semis would get confused and turned around, and they would come on 1800 North where they're not supposed to be, and they would track dirt in, and our kids are playing on the cul-de-sac riding their bikes, and the trucks would turn around with very little regard for our children. Come on, hurry and get off the road. You know, it was kind of scary. With this many semis and that tiny little road, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's just dirt right there off of Antelope right now, and it is small, and I don't think all of them are going to find it. So I don't think that's going to work out well. So we're just worried that this isn't going to be how it sounds. And that's what I had to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak at this time? Mr. Crane, by chance, is there anything online?
No, there's not. I just checked. So
Thank you very much. Okay, seeing that there's no one else who would wish to speak on this topic, Council, I'll look forward to some action regarding item number A of the public hearing.
I'd like to make a comment before we take action. I was on the Planning Commission at the time that this initially came, and we spent a lot of time out of concern for the residents on both sides of this L shape. And knowing that this was an APZ zone, we were kind of limited as to what could be allowed anyway. I know that safety of the people that live on that street and the traffic was a real concern of the Planning Commission at that time, as well as being able to provide proper berming and fencing and turning the building away and all kinds of stuff so that the residents who were previously there before this piece of property was developed, that their lifestyle was, protected. And so, as I mentioned in the in the work meeting, I live adjacent to the West Davis corridor construction that has just started. And the last thing we want to see is to allow these dump trucks and stuff to be on a residential road like that, dumping rocks and dumping pipe and whatever else, and the amount of dust. So I think they have some really valid points. And I think as the Planning Commission did in 2017, there's a reason why that was left off of that list at that time, is that it's too great of an impact for this area.
Anyone else wish to make a comment before we take any action here? If not, I'll look for someone to make a motion.
I probably shouldn't make a comment, but I'm going to. I don't think it applies to this piece particularly, but I think there has to be somewhat understanding with construction. I mean, we all want the projects, we all want the roads. We have to put up with a little bit of trucks on the road once in a while. It inconveniences all of us. That's not saying that I support this, but I think that's something that we need to remember sometimes. I mean, we've got trucks running all over the city right now that normally aren't here, and it's to our benefit in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Saying that, I don't support this, and I'll make the motion that we close the public hearing and we deny the development agreement amendment.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second that we deny the development agreement with the Heartland Corporation. Being that this is a public hearing, I'll need to take a roll call vote. I'll start out with Councilman Day,
Yes.
Councilman Bloxham,
Yes.
Councilman Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Councilman Morris,
Aye.
Councilman Thomas.
Yeah.
Okay, there you have it. It's unanimous that this item be denied. Okay, we'll now move on to item number B of our public hearing, which is a rezone request for South Fort Lane. And Mr. Chad Wilkinson will also present that item for us.
You doing something?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This is a rezone request from the current zoning of R18 to CTH, which is a condo townhome zone. The property is at 483 South Fort Lane. Right there, that red dot on the map is where the property is located toward the south part of the city. You can see on this aerial photography the existing property outlined in red. There's an existing home there. The property is about just a little under an acre, 0.88 acres is the size of this parcel. This is a map that shows the current general plan designation for this property. The property is designated as a mixed-use corridor. The property is outlined in black here on the screen. The mixed-use corridor extends all up and down Fort Lane in this area. We've recently adopted some zone changes to the south that again are compliant with that mixed-use corridor for that CTH zoning. This is an exhibit that our planner, Brandon Rippian, put together showing the developable area of the site once the setbacks are taken into account. Although it is a little bit of an odd-shaped parcel, there is adequate development area once those setbacks are taken out. You can see the square footage is left over there. It depends on the height of the buildings as far as where they'd be set back, but certainly plenty of room for some development of townhomes on the property. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission did forward a recommendation of approval. There was some concern expressed over the zone change and by a couple of the commissioners. And this exhibit is one of the ways that concern has been addressed, which is to show that there is adequate room for development on this site. The thing that's a little bit different about this particular zone district as opposed to a mixed-use zone district is we have exact setbacks. We know the densities. We know the types of buildings that can fit on this property. Those have been looked at by staff. We do feel like this is a viable site for some condo townhome development. So we do join with the Planning Commission in recommending approval, and we would recommend that the City Council adopt Ordinance 2121, approving this zone change from R18 to CTH. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Chad, for having them clarify that map. I think it does help in many ways. So anyway, with that, Council.
Yeah, Chad. So I see on the map there that I believe I went back and looked, February 18th was when we made that determination on the property that's to the south of this one.
Okay, yes, yeah, I think that's right, yeah. The Danzy property.
Yeah, and if I remember right, that one I could distinguish from that one from this one because the one on the south that they owned or that they were able to get access on the east side. Is that correct?
They didn't. So no, the access was actually just on the west side on Fort Lane. They had property back on the back, but that property it remained as R18, and they'll have a single family home built on that property.
So it's substantially similar to the one that we have now.
It is.
Because that R18 stayed in the back portion on the east side.
That's right. You can see that'll remain here too on the boundary on that general plan designation. There's the existing subdivision. There'll be 2 R18 lots that will back up on this particular lot. The policies of the general plan identify that this mixed-use corridor, these CTH zones, are appropriate buffers between higher intensity uses along these arterial streets like Fort Lane and those single-family neighborhoods. And that's one of the reasons why these have been extended up and down some of our busier streets.
So I have a question and maybe towards Gary. So it's zoned mixed use right now. So the lot to the north and south of this could become a taco time, a law office. It could be anything, correct?
It's not zoned mixed use. No, it's zoned R18 right now.
But it's in the mixed use corridor.
It's in the mixed use corridor for the general plan. That's right.
General plan.
That's right. So it's designated for mixed use corridor in the general plan.
Okay, but
So if someone asked for a taco
if somebody
time
came
there-
in and asked for, we could have a condo, a restaurant, a condo, a dentist office. What I'm leading to is there a way we have a general plan, and in my mind, it's a plan. I feel like some of what we're doing, and especially here, it's like we're closing our eyes and we're throwing a dart and we're saying, oh, that's a good lot, we'll put a condo here, rather than thinking about a plan. Is there a way, since we've done 2 properties already in condos, that this can be identified still as mixed use, but a condo corridor or a residential corridor, so we see twin homes or we see condos? I'm really worried that as we start picking this apart in a mixed use, that every other lot's going to be something different. And I don't think that's the intent of the plan. The plan is to create an organized plan. I don't see that happening if we're picking and choosing lots.
Well, I'd be happy to take a stab, and if Gary wants to add to it, that's fine. But my response to that would be that's your role as the city council, is that as we get these proposals, you're going to make sure that we have, cohesive development that occurs. We have a general plan that gives the general policies that guide development in these corridors. There's going to be a discussion each time someone comes in for a zone change about the appropriateness of the various types of uses that are allowed in that zone. In this case, this is exactly what the mixed-use corridor anticipated, is that we would have higher densities along these arterial corridors, that this would be a mix of uses. We found that it's unlikely for commercial to develop in these areas simply because of the depth of the lots. They're not deep enough for commercial development. That was one of the analyses that we did on this previous zone change. If you remember, part of that was commercially zoned, and we said, is this something that makes sense to continue with the changing circumstances at the development to the north? Well, we just don't think that there's any viability for any commercial use. We think it would be unusual, or it would be it wouldn't be expected that these would go commercial. So we think it will predominantly develop on this east side of Fort Lane residentially. But that's something for us to, again, as the city council, as you look at these individual zone changes, that'll be something that we'll need to analyze with each of these zone changes and make sure that we're not getting that piecemeal development that you're talking about.
And the reason why I ask that is because, like, when a high traffic area, say, State Street and Clearfield, when those residential homes, aged out, it was zoned commercial. So when that property sold, there was already a commercial zone on it. Is there not a way to somehow protect this as a high density residential area or a medium density residential area, so we don't start, in my mind, spot zoning or just mishmash and no thought of consistency in an area?
That's what the general plan does. I mean, that's the whole purpose of that general plan is to make sure we don't have, mishmash development like you described. This is an area that we've already designated. These properties are not zoned commercial. They're zoned single-family residential for the most part. So the council will have the ability each time to make sure that we have cohesive, sound development that's occurring in these areas that's
Okay, 'cause-
consistent with the general plan.
Because mixed use is beyond residential, so.
But mixed use is not the zone. That's that corridor. You'll have the ability to say yes or no to mixed use zones. Right now, the zoning that's been proposed by both of these has been CTH, which we know that's a zone that we have a lot of standards that apply that tell us exactly what that development's going to look like. We're going to be coming back to the council in the next few months, we hope, with mixed use standards that'll further even define those. But that being said, I think the idea here is that there might be some time when there is a mixed use development that may make some sense, that a commercial component may make some sense in these areas, depending on the characteristics of the property. And that's really up to your planning commission. That's their task, is to look at these zone changes and to make sure they're consistent with the general plan and that they create cohesive development. With the zone change, these are legislative. So there's no right now existing entitlements for a certain type of development here. It's really up to you to say, this is what we want to see. The general plan provides a guiding framework for that, but it's up to you as a city council through the legislative process to say, this is what's going to go in these properties. This particular property, we found to be large enough to support a condo townhome type development. It has those characteristics. It's on that, again, that arterial corridor where we want to provide a transition between higher intensities to lower intensities. And so we do find that it's consistent with that general plan.
Like I say, I have no problem with it being condo. I would like to see that it all become, like I said, a consistent strip of something consistent. Multifamily of some kind. The other concern I have is on the Alice Townhomes, did they not come and ask for a buffer reduction?
They did as part of their development proposal. Yeah.
And I see that happening here. This is even an odder shaped piece of property.
As you know, we've made that harder to do. Is with our new landscape ordinance, it's a much more difficult process to go through to get a buffer amendment. We've also right-sized those buffers to help with that, but it's going to be a much harder thing for that to go forward.
Because in that process, if they do come in and request a buffer, it stops at the planning commission, correct? A buffer reduction? We would never see it on
That's
the
a
city
planning
council.
commission decision, but again, it's much more difficult to get a landscape buffer reduction, and we've already reduced that with the new code amendment anyway.
Okay, I believe Mr. Crane wants to comment on this.
So no, I think your point is excellent. One of the items of discussion up at the legislature just about every year is, should we make the general plan a mandatory thing or a discretionary thing? And we have always fought to make it discretionary because it's dynamic. It should be changing all the time. And what you're doing tonight is a perfect example of zoning something and pretty much setting the pace for everything else that will zone up and down that. You're setting that by setting the zoning in place, the zoning that you're setting in place tonight. You're pretty much assigning that part of the corridor residential, and future councils or future decisions that will be made up there will be made according to what you see is the best use up there. But the nice thing about the general plan is it is dynamic, and if it was mandated, you just about have to prove whatever came in and knocked on your door. But you don't have to do that. You can say, no, we're going to wait for residential on that because we think this thing is actually moving with residential up and down the corridor, so we think it should remain residential. So I think your point is really good.
So we can arbitrarily deny something, even though they came with something that would fit on the property, it fits in the mixed use zone, and we could deny it just because we felt like, because it wasn't a townhome, that it couldn't go there?
Shall we not use the word arbitrarily? Actually, yeah. The answer to your question is, you have the most flexibility in a zone change. All you need is a rational basis for a zone change, and a rational basis might be, I see a trend up and down that corridor. I'm going to deny this zoning for commercial because I see the trend is residential for that corridor. That's enough of a rational basis.
Okay.
It's anything upon which reasonable minds could differ. And you know what? You got 5 reasonable minds here that could all differ. So your point is good. It wouldn't be arbitrary as long as it follows your general plan, and your general plan would be consistent with a residential designation if you chose to do that and do that only. Does that make sense? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Council, does anyone else wish to make a comment on this before we hear from the public?
Go ahead, Tom.
No, go ahead.
No, I think it's kind of goes to the crux of what we try to decide as a council is that we have property rights from people who own this property and want to do something, and they've looked at our general plan and they've seen their neighbor to the south there be accepted in a very similar situation for a similar ask. And I think that we demand some consistency as a body to make sure that we can provide that kind of consistency for people as they look to us for answers. So I think, like you mentioned, Don, and we had a phone call about this, just Don and I, about discussing kind of these kinds of things, about making sure we're setting a good trend line, because these are decisions that property owners are making in their own properties, and we want to make sure we're giving them the right path. So I think that this, with the staff understanding that these are not commercially viable, that they're too short to do that, and it's in the mixed use corridor. This might start a cacophony of townhouses in this particular zone, but maybe that's the best use of land, and it's really not our place to I think stop that. If that's what the property owners want, the general plan allows for it, and there's a rational basis for it.
Okay, Mr. Day.
Yeah, I'm going to bring out the opposite point of view, because right now we have a pretty consistent residential area up and down that street. And I know 2 of the commissioners, I was at the planning commission meeting, and the 2 that voted against it, their reasoning was, as Chad can tell us, from what I understood, was the shape and the size of the piece. They weren't necessarily in approval. And I tend to agree with that. I mean, I don't think every piece that somebody wants to sell that we should just turn around and build condos on it, which seems to be the trend as well. So that's just kind of an opposite point of view. I mean, we have single-family homes pretty much up the thing, so I could make the argument. I'm not saying how I'm voting yet, but we're changing the character and what's there by rezoning it.
Okay. Anyone else?
And I agree with what Zach had to say. I really do firmly believe this needs to be townhomes. And I would love to see an assemblage of a lot of the lots to create a bigger townhome. But we can't force the owners to sell either. It's just my concern that I won't be here after the end of this year, that hopefully in the future, that future council members remember this discussion, that it isn't to be a polka dotted, like I said, or throw a dart at a board and hope you hit it. As the way we zone each of these little pieces, one of them may not be big enough for a business, but you take 3 of those homes and it may be, and like I said, then you kind of start checkerboarding things. As long as it stays condos, I'm actually good with that.
Okay. Anyone else before we open it up to the public? Okay. Seeing that there's no other comments by the council at this time, I'll go ahead and open this up for public comment. Our public hearing has been open, so we can go ahead and proceed. Anyone who wishes to comment on this rezone request, please come up to the mic, state your name and address for the record. And again, if you're speaking on behalf of a group, please let us know so I can let you speak longer. Otherwise, keep your comments brief. Go ahead.
Tom Tudor, 1757 Gregory Drive, Layton, Utah, 84041. And I've lived in Layton for 52 years. So I have watched many of the government mayors and city councilmen go through here. All 3 of my daughters graduated from Layton High School. And so I'm concerned about the people, the politicians, and also everything that is done really for the people, the taxpayer, and everyone that's involved. So what I see, and I've seen for years, where people come in there and they buy lots of property. And we've all been seeing that. And because of the military base, hundreds of people are going to be moving into Layton, Utah. I'm sure a lot of you have heard from Hill Air Force Base because I was 20 years in the United States Air Force. Some of you may know that I am a retired Layton City policeman after 20 years and took care of everybody's things and problems for 20 years. So I'm always for the people, but they got to be right and honest. And so I think this is what the common people see, is somebody comes in here as councilmen or people that want to build condos or stores or something like that. They want to make sure all of you understand that plan. And now this is the first time I've heard of the plan. So I would like to have a copy of the plan for me and my 35,000 people that I know in this city to show them, because I'm quite a wide talker, but I also was criminal investigator for 10 years. So I always like the honest people, no matter who they are. So that's about all I got to say. So please think about it.
So, Mr. Tudor, I'll tell you that I co-chaired the General Plan Committee. It took us 5 years, a lot of citizen input. And if you go to the website, city website, it's there. The citizens know that it's there. It's front page on a lot of our stuff. So this is not a secret. The general plan is not something that was done behind closed doors or anything. It is available to the general public. They can open it up. They can see all of this. These maps, this map that was just shown is in that general plan and has been posted on that website for about 2 years now.
Okay, where do I go into City Hall to get the plan? Right over at the desk and ask for it? Okay, I'll do that tomorrow. Thank you for your intellect and all of your fine things.
Thank you, Tommy. Okay, is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this topic?
Hi, my name is Tim Poole, 713 South, 600 East. I'm a home designer, and I actually did a preliminary study on this site for the Hardings, who've lived in that house for 27 years. I would like to address the two major concerns that came from the Planning Commission meeting, the two no votes. One was that one of the commissioners felt that it was too soon to do this type of rezone. And to that I say there's precedent already been set along that east side of Fort Lane. To the south, the project that's just been recently approved. And then to the north, there's two projects between this project and Layton Parkway that were approved, one a couple years ago that has 7 units on a half acre. And then the Twin Trees project that's been there, 25 years, a long, long time. So so I feel the precedent's already been set to rezone this to a condo townhouse, as other ones have already been done. Another comment that was made was they felt that the entry was very narrow for this type of project. And to that I say that means we're going to have less density, because that triangular shaped project, when I did the layout, I got substantially less than the 14 that it could theoretically allow. When I factored in the setbacks required of the CTH zone, the fact that the depth of this lot will require a fire truck turnaround. So I have to, that's a lot of area eaten up for this space and the roadway itself. I got 7 units on it. Now, theoretically, may I get 9? Possibly. But it would be, I felt comfortable with 7, and the owners felt comfortable with 7. And having been there 27 years, all the neighbors are their friends, and they don't want something to go in there that's big and tall and ugly and imposing. They want to control the type of townhouse that does go in there. And so anyway, because of that that narrow frontage, that is probably about the same width as Twin Trees frontage, I would guess. And that other project of the 7 isn't much wider. I feel that was a concern that wasn't really well thought out on their part. And because of that, again, it does reduce the buildable area. It means our buildings will be probably put 60 feet off the street, and therefore giving us a nice green space coming into this project. So anyway, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this? Mr. Crane, is there any online comments? Okay. Seeing that there's no more comments, council, do you have any comments? If not, I'll look for action regarding the rezone request and to close the public hearing.
Madam Mayor, make a motion that we close the public hearing and the city council adopt ordinance 2121 approving the rezone request from R18 to CH on the recommendation of the Planning Commission and staff, and that it's consistent with the general plan's land use for this property.
I'll second.
It's been moved in second. I'll take a roll call vote on this. So it looks like Councilman Bloxham's ready to state his.
Sure. Aye.
Okay. Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Councilman Thomas?
Aye.
Councilman Fitzpatrick?
Aye.
Councilman Day?
No.
Okay, there you have it. The vote's 4-1. And I appreciate everyone's comment and your patience here regarding these items and the fact that we were able to deal with all of them. Council, do you
Mayor,
have any unfinished business you'd like?
Just a quick.
Excuse me?
This comment popped in just a minute ago, so
Oh.
it probably must have been. I don't know that it
We need to open it though, because I mean,
yeah, I think this is more just a general comment about the master plan than it is regarding this particular project.
okay, please state it though.
So I'll just read it to you. It's just very brief. It says, it's from Aaron Sandberg, and it says, the master plan is irrelevant with the population we have now. The zoning and infrastructure is supposed to support a growth till 2040, at which time the population would be 80,000. We're already at that. Therefore, all planning needs to be revisited to meet the needs of current and future residents. And I think Councilperson Fitzpatrick addressed that issue. Our master plan is very, very current. It is probably one of the most current master plans around because we just finished working on it for.
And Chad can probably help me with this, but I think we stayed in there, isn't it, that the population by 2040 is like 115,000? And it's actually worded that way in the master plan.
Yeah, and I do know that Layton, that our plan is one of the most current ones. But at that same token, though, there's no reason why we can't readdress it and look
And
at it.
we'd be happy to
But
reach out to that
certainly
citizen
it's-
and let them know about the updated plan.
Yeah.
Yep. Happy to do
So,
that.
I mean, I don't think that's an issue.
Well, and we've made changes to the plan too as we've gone along. I mean, we've updated our, not necessarily the plan, but we've updated PRUD guidelines, we've updated the CTH. So we're making adjustments within that plan to accommodate the growth and water issues and stuff like that.
All right, council, I'll look for a motion to close tonight's meeting.
I'll make the motion.
Yeah, I mentioned it in there. Okay, it's been, Councilman Day made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, I don't think, do I need to say, all those in favor say aye? Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate everyone in the audience and for those folks listening online. And hopefully you can see that there's a lot of good information here for all of us to learn and benefit our city. So thank you.